In the last movie, we saw some of the calculated totals that we can use when including numerical data within the query wizard. Let's explore the totals row in Design View a little more closely in order to understand exactly what is going on with these summary calculations. We can use the totals field within Access to help build some summary queries. Applying aggregate operations within the Design View is a simple way to move beyond just displaying the data that is currently in your database. And there are a bunch of additional options that we can apply that aren't available when using the wizard. Let's go ahead and go up to the Create tab and start a new query in Design View. Here, from the Show Table window, I'm just going to go ahead and add the States table. So just double-click on it and say Close. From the States table, I'm going to double-click on Region Name to add that to the first column of my query design. And I just want to go ahead and run this to see what our current results are. Here we can see the 51 records if I look at the bottom, and this is just the region name extracted straight out of the States table. It's showing me the region for each of the states. Let's go ahead and switch back into Design View. Now I want to go ahead and turn on this Totals row here. Up on the ribbon, there's this Sigma button that says Totals below it. If I click on it to toggle it on, you'll notice down here in the Query Design Grid that I get this new row called Total, and below region name, it says Group By. Now without making any other changes, let's rerun this query to see what happened. I'll go up to Run, and we'll switch into Datasheet View. Now our query results look decidedly different. By turning on the Totals row, all of the regions with the same name collapse into a single record. So you can see that I have 4 regions within the States table. Let's go back into Design View and change it up a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a column for division name. I'll just double-click on that to add it to the grid. Let's go ahead and run to see the results. Now I can see that I have my region names here and each division within that region. So for instance, in the Midwest region, I have a division East North Central and West North Central. In the Western region, I have the Mountain Division and the Pacific Division. Let's go ahead and go back into Design View. Let's go ahead now and add in our state name. I'll double-click on that to add it to the grid, and we'll view the results. Now I'm seeing that I'm back to 51 records if I look at the bottom, and what I'm seeing is the unique pairing of region, division, and state name. So in fact, what this is returning is all of the states within the States table. Let's go ahead and go back into Design View. So every time we add a field into our query, this Totals row here gets set to Group By. That is the default option. When it's set to Group By, what we're seeing are all of the unique pairings of, in this case, a region, a division, and a state. We can remove a column from the grouping levels by clicking on this word Group By, and notice that it's a drop-down list. If we open this up, we can see that we have several aggregate calculations that we can apply. Now, most of these aren't going to apply to text data like we have with our state name values. For instance, I can't add them up or sum them. I can't find their average or their min or their max. But what I can do is count up the number of records within that group. So now if I change this to count, what's going to happen is that it's going to group all of my regions together. Within the region groups, it's going to expand to show me all the unique pairings of a region and a division. And then within each of those groups, it's going to count up the number of state records that occurred. Let's go ahead and run this to see the results. Now I can see how many states are in each division within our states table. So for instance, in the Midwest region, the East North Central division, we have 5 states. Within the Western region, in the Pacific division, I have 5 states. Let's go ahead and switch back into Design View. Let's go ahead and remove the division and state name columns. I'll just click at the very top so that they highlight. I'll drag to select them both, and then I'll press Delete on my keyboard. Let's go ahead and add in another table. I'm going to press Show Table and pull in my Customers table. Let's use what we just saw to find out how many customers are in each of our regions. What I want to do is add in Customer ID from the Customers table, and then change its total row from Group By, which will show each unique customer ID, to Count. This will group all of my records by region, and then within each region, it's going to count up the number of customers that occur. We'll go ahead and run to see the results, and we can see that in the Midwest region, we have 191 customers. In the Southern region, we have 412 customers. If you wanted to see the number of customers in each division, we can do that as well. I'll switch back into Design View. I'm going to add division back into my query grid, and then I'm going to drag it to the middle position. So I'll click here at the top, and then click and drag to put it in the middle. Now we're going to group our regions together. Within those regions, we're going to group our divisions, and then within those groups, we're going to count up how many customers occur. We'll run the query to see the results. So again, in the East North Central region, I have 111 customers. Let's go ahead and see how this works out for states. I'll go back into Design View. This time I'll add my state name, and I'll drag it into the middle. I'll put it between division and customer ID. Now we're grouping by region, then grouping by division, then grouping by state, then counting up our customers. Let's run the query. Now we can see exactly how many customers are in each state. Now, if I take a look at the very bottom, I can see that I'm still only returning 49 records. If I wanted to find out which 2 states didn't have customers, what I need to do is go back into Design View and edit the join properties between these 2 tables. We saw this earlier in the course. If I double-click on this line, I can choose to include all records from states and only those records from the customers where the join fields are equal. That'll show me every state and then the details for the states that have customers. Let's go ahead and say OK, and we'll run the results. Now I can see that I have 51 states present. That's all 50 states plus the District of Columbia. Let's go ahead and sort our customer counts here, smallest to largest. Now I can see the 2 states that don't have any customers. That would be the states of Wyoming and New Hampshire. Now let's mix up the query a little bit so we can get some information for how much each region, division, and state has contributed to our bottom line. Let's go back into Design View, and I'm going to remove this column here for the count of customer ID. I'll select it at the top and then press Delete on the keyboard. I need to add 2 more tables here in order to get to our pricing information. So I'll go up to Show Table, and we're going to add the Orders table, which will join from customers to orders, and then I'll add the Products table, which will give me a join from orders to products. Now I can go into the Products table and find our suggested retail price. This is the price that the customer paid for the products that they order. If I add in suggested retail price into my query grid, but leave it as group by, if I try and run the query, it's going to give me this error message saying that the SQL statement could not be executed because it contains ambiguous outer joins. We actually need to go back and change the join properties between states and customers. So let's go ahead and say OK. I'll double-click on the join line and change it back to only include rows where the join fields on both tables are equal. We'll go ahead and say OK, and then we'll run the query. Now what we're seeing is kind of junk data. I've got 1,101 records here, but it's not really telling me anything useful. What this is saying is that I have 1,101 unique pairings of a region name, a division name, a state, and some random dollar value. So this really isn't showing me anything useful. Let's go back into Design View and change this from Group By here to Sum. Now we're going to group our regions. Within our regions, we're going to group our divisions. Within our divisions, we're going to group our states. And then within those records, we're going to add up the suggested retail price so we can see how much money each state has brought into the company. We'll run it to see the results. And again, I can sort this in order to get some interesting information. For instance, the state of New York has contributed the most to our bottom line. If I wanted to aggregate my numbers to the division instead of the state, all I need to do is remove state from the equation. I'll go back into Design View, click on State, and press Delete. Now we're going to group to the division and then add up all the retail prices within that. I can run it, and then I can sort, largest to smallest, to see that the South Atlantic states have brought in the most money combined. Let's go ahead and go back into Design View. I'm going to go ahead and delete division, so I just have region and then the sum of suggested retail price. If I run it and sort again, largest to smallest, I can see that all of the states in the southern region combined have brought in more than $2 million. So aggregate calculations are vertical computations that rely on secondary group by fields to define the aggregation level. Also, these calculations are not saved in any tables. Just like the rest of your queries, they simply store the instructions for how to gather the requested information and are updated and recomputed every time the query is run. This means that they always display current information based on the values present in the database at the time the query is run or refreshed.